Welcome to our present state versus history on Speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield.
Okay, folks, here we are back on the pod. It is May the 1st, 2022. Can you believe it? Rolling out this year. It's going by faster and faster, seems like, as we go along. Things are just crazy and out of hand. We're doing these series here on the principles of freedom, dealing with our Constitution and the basic principles that govern us, that we should be trying to live by and protecting, that our Constitution's set up to protect. This National Center for Constitutional Studies, the nccs.net, is a great resource for information if you're interested in furthering your own studies. I'm not trying to give you the full ins and outs here as much as we're just trying to whet your appetite, I guess you could say. Chris Ann Hall at chrisannhall.com is fabulous resource. She's got all kinds of good stuff there and some books she's wrote dealing with the Constitution and history, dealing with the 1100 Charter of Liberty, and going into some of these documents that were created prior to our Constitution, that were the source, I guess you could say, that our founding fathers were using to come up with the documents. And most importantly, the Word of God is what we're focusing on here, is bringing the relevance to the Word of God to these things that affect our lives every day. I feel like that's been a failure of the church, you might say, in bringing these things out as to the relevancy. We have a society today that doesn't seem to think that these things are relevant in our lives today, that they're just all outdated, that the Constitution's an old document that's outdated, and after all, the Bible's been around a lot longer than that, and it's just, old history stuff. But the reality of it is, it is not. We've discussed this idea coming along in the mid... I guess I would say the late 1800s and the early 1900s. It started creeping into the United States with these different philosophies of should we say, abstract interpretation of things, which allows this thought process we hear today so much about these so-called living, breathing documents and how they need to be updated. Well, that's nowhere near the truth. The fact of the matter is, these documents are rigid. They are law. They are the thing that we are supposed to be changing. If anything is going to be changed or adapted to, our life is supposed to be adapted to these documents. And that's one of the principles we want to deal with today, is the reason why our Constitution has been so successful for so long is because it's not a document that is a how-to to do government type thing. It is a document that was set up to protect us against the human nature and the human frailties, because when we as people get in positions of power and influence where we can make money, then corruption is easily let in and becomes the norm. And so these men that put together these documents, they were trying to set up a system that would protect us against the corruption of man and the human nature. Because the one thing that doesn't change throughout history, no matter what the state of mankind finds himself in, is the human nature. And that's the reason why the Word of God is so relevant today. That's the reason why our Constitution is still relevant today. It's the reason why all of these events of history, as we look back and see the corruption and the pollution or delusion of facts and truths, it's because of somebody trying to figure out a way in and manipulate the masses in order to accomplish what it is that they want to accomplish for themselves. And we've got this ideology going on today that we can't question the government and that we don't want to, we shouldn't be suspicious of the government and what have you. But the reality of it is, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to not trust the people that are in those positions of power to not be corrupt, because those elements of corruption are strong. It's not that we think we've put people in office to go that aren't capable of leading, but once they get there, the overwhelming draw into that corruption is the most powerful thing. And we've seen that in our own history if we just stop and look around a little bit as to what's going on. I mean, for Pete's sake, regardless of what you think of President Trump and the Republicans or the Democrats or anything else, but if you'll look at the behavior of human animal from the 2016 election forward as to what is going on, you can see exactly what these forefathers were talking about. We have a group of people that were threatened by their position in power, and the reality of it is the opposing party never succeeded to the will of the people, which is half of our problem in our political arena right now, is because the people don't understand the basic element. When they're elected to a position, there are no longer constituents that they're working for. It's no longer a divided party system. It is the whole of the people. So you no longer have the, should we say, luxury to speak your own opinion about anything. It is the will of the majority of the people, or of the good of the whole, that you have to be focused on and looking forward to. But that never took place in 2016. Instead, we created a ongoing war between two sides that never ended, all the way up until, well, it's still going on today. Because we have, why did that happen? Because we have people who are on one side, they're paranoid and panicking because they're losing their positions of power and their corruption's being exposed. And on the other side, we have those that are warring and fighting against that corruption. So we have this natural conflict that's taken place, which is exactly what our forefathers has warned us about was going to take place if we didn't pay attention to what's going on. And unfortunately, I'm just as guilty as anybody else sitting here in this chair, as my generation, is we haven't paid much attention to what's been going on in these positions, and over the last couple of generations, it's crept in and it's got more powerful, and it's got its feet and its hands in control of things that it should never been, because we didn't pay attention to these things that we should have been paying attention to. And we can blame the system, we can blame the educational system, we can blame whatever. But the truth of the matter is, because of my lack of interest, I didn't educate myself and learn the things I needed to learn and start paying attention to the things I needed to be paying attention to. And therefore, I was easily swayed and distracted and manipulated to do what it was that the people who wanted the corruption and power wanted to get done. And that's where our society is today. And we got to realize that, first of all, and then we got to do something about it. And that's what we're trying to do here with this podcast, especially with this little section we're doing right now on this governmental thing. Our forefathers, they were talking about this very thing when they were debating our Constitution. And Thomas Jefferson, he was pretty, I like Thomas Jefferson. There ain't a whole lot of room for misunderstanding of the stuff he wrote, and he's pretty direct and to the point. And he wrote here, he said, "It would be a dangerous delusion were a confidence in the man of our choices to silence our fears for the safety of our rights. That confidence is everywhere the parent of disposition." He says, "Free government is founded in jealousy and not in confidence. It is jealousy and not confidence which prescribes limits to the limited constitutions to bind down those whom we are obligated to trust with power. That our Constitution has accordingly fixed the limits to which and no further our confidence may go. In questions of power, then, let no more be said of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. So he's telling us right there that we can't have confidence in man as far as his abilities and the things he's going to do. We got to create a constitution to chain man down, to keep him from being involved in mischief, is what he's calling it, or corruption. We just call it what it is. They talk about our leaders not being angels, talking about if we had angels leading everything in our government, then we would have no need for these things, because they would automatically do the right things by the will of God, according to his word and according to those laws that Locke and Mr. Blackstone and others have come up with, which are all based on the word of God. And if we operate in those things like we should, then we wouldn't need a constitution to keep people in line, would we? We would just be able to trust them to do right. But we don't live in that society yet, so therefore we don't trust our fellow man in the aspects of being able to resist the corruption that's going to come forth. And he's also telling us that when we see the erosion of our Constitution taking place, that we should act quickly in order to right those erosions. And there's been several erosions that this 1900 generation has brought forth especially, and then there's been some since then that have come into our Constitution that we really need to correct. We did not do this very thing right here. We did not quickly right these erosions. And because of that, we have a lot of the issues on the table that we're dealing with today that would have never been, because we allowed these changes to take place that seem to be so minor, but they have proven to be the major catalyst to bring massive amounts of corruption into our government, which makes it completely out of control. We get into the dealings with our positioning of our rights and our liberties and our property. See, and this is where I get into one of my little pet peeves that I've been in a little squabble with myself right here with my own county and state, because we've allowed things to get involved in when it comes to our private property that are dangerous things. And the reality of it is, we've already lost, especially here in the state of Missouri, we really don't have private property anymore, because we have this personal property tax that we go dealing with. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But the fact of the matter is, the forefathers, they believed that these three areas were absolutely critical, and they also believed that everything hinged on this ability to own property and have private property. That is a key phrase, private property. And that's something that we have not fully understood as a citizenry, as to the value of what it means to actually have private property. But you see, with the private property, that is the, should I say, the gauge or the element that we have our life and our liberty based upon. It is not that the property itself has any value to it. I mean, it has its monetary value, but where the reality of the rights and the principles come into with that private property is it is a extension, if you will, of the life that is lived in that area with our life itself, because as we move into growing and building in our property, then what we do with that property, it is a projection or an extension of the life we're living. Okay, does that make sense? So we build houses. I mean, we look around and people drive by their houses. We think, oh, they're successful. They got this mansion with a gate around it or whatever. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, but you see the point. That's that development of that, the way they've got their landscaping and the way they've they've cared for their property or developed it, or maybe instead of being a house, it turn it into a restaurant, and that's their dream. And so you see the extension of that individual and the dreams that they had and what they've worked to achieve.